Welcome back, and just in case you're just joining us, this is still Global Morning, and I'm being joined right now by Professor Kuta Yahaya Mohammed, and he is the Secretary of the Presidential Committee on Livestock. You're welcome to Global Television.
Livestock reforms, yes, thank you.
All right, so tell us about the livestock reforms so far. We heard about the livestock reforms, and all of a sudden right now we're not hearing much about it. How well have we been able to implement some of what has been proposed, even the livestock reforms?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and good morning Nigerians and the world global view of this program. The Presidential Livestock Reforms Implementation Committee was inaugurated by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the 9th of July 2024 with himself as the chairman and appointing Professor Atairu Jega as the co-chairman, and my humble self as the secretary, with other 23 members drawn from across academia, practicing livestock farmers, social scientists, and a host of other professionals who have valuable experience in the livestock value chain. It's gratifying to tell you that the committee has so far so good. Based on the 16 terms of reference directed by Mr. President, we have been able to generate 120 reform activities, and already we have 22 objectives derived from the terms of reference, and one of the major component of the activities is the establishment of Ministry of Livestock Development, and the ministry has been established by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the day of the inauguration, and it's very gratifying to let you know that the ministry has taken off, because a substantive minister, Mukhtar Maya, has been appointed, and the permanent secretary has also been deployed, and other key officials are already taking their position in the ministry. Also, I'm very glad to tell you that the committee was able to secure a strategic building for the ministry at the Central Business District of Abuja, very close to the Bank of Industry, your neighbor, very close around here, on the strategic location of Abuja. And the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Barrister Wilson Wike, has been directed by Mr. President to rehabilitate and furnish the building for the ministry takeoff. It is enough for the takeoff of the ministry, so we're looking forward to that. Also, based on the activities, sensitization and mobilization of the committee, we had a stakeholder consultative forum exactly on the October 24th and 25th. Professionals, practitioners, and all those affected by the livestock industry were keen across the value chain. Is it for poultry? Is it for piggery? Is it for swine, or is it for cattle? Every aspect of livestock they were all in Abuja at the Presidential Villa. That workshop was declared open by Mr. President on the 24th of October, and he made some landmark statement that he is ready to partner with the committee, the ministry, and to really unlock the potentials of the sector for the world. And we are gratified to be part of that conversation. Many people were happy to see Mr. President taking the bull by the horn. At the end of that conversation, we came up with a communique and proceedings that really generated a lot of guidance for the stakeholders in the industry, and that has led to other consultations with many states. So far, we have visited Bauchi State, Plateau State, and Borno State, Osun State, and Niger State, and had on their invitation to come and shed more light on what the committee and the reforms are all about. I'm pleased to inform you that Bauchi State has already established and appointed a commissioner for the Ministry of Livestock and Fishery Development. Plateau State just recently appointed and established the Ministry of Livestock, Veterinary Health and Fishery Development, and appointed a commissioner designate. Niger State already had a Ministry of Livestock Development, of over a decade.
Which you served under the government.
Yes, I was part of those who midwife the establishment of that ministry by the Babangida Aliyu administration, where I was secretary to the government. Also, the current governor, the former governor, had already established a ministry of pastoral and nomadic affairs to look at the interests of those people who are affected by the challenges in the industry. Also, I'm just happy to also inform you that Kogi State has established Ministry of Livestock Development just recently too. And already Borno State has established Ministry of Livestock Development and even an agency, Borno Livestock Management Agency. So you can imagine already we are expected to also, Jigawa State has also established not only a reform committee, but a mirror of what the National Livestock Committee reform is, because they call it Jigawa Livestock Reforms Implementation Committee. So just a pattern after Mr. President's design. So already we're expecting invitation. Sokoto has invited us to come out also shed light. They have the Ministry of Animal Husbandry, but they are already consulting with us to also expand the frontiers beyond animal husbandry, because animal health is a component of livestock development, so it's holistic. Now we are also expected, in the coming days to also be in Jigawa State to shed more light and engage the stakeholders. So on the whole, decentralization is real. Excuse me. And then in the process, Mr. President confessed and acknowledged the committee that you have opened up to us what many people do not know about the livestock sector, because we were able to engage, we were able to submit an exceptional report on 19th September to Mr. President, and further to that, he had already supported with so many things that are coming up. In November 17th to 20th, Mr. President is extended the invitation to the co-chairman, Professor Tarodega, and myself to join other teams at the G20 in Brazil. At that G20, we were able to meet with Brazilian investors. It was exciting that the biggest industrial livestock meat producer in the world, JBS, were at their factory. And they promised Mr. President, they signed a memorandum of intent. Letter of intent was given by the Minister of Livestock, who signed on behalf of the federal government, to come to Nigeria to invest $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion in the livestock sector in Nigeria. They sent a team in December to have a recce, kind of assess what is on the ground. And the team that came to Nigeria were blown away by the potentials of Nigeria. So in the coming weeks, in fact, in less than a week, the Brazilians will be in Nigeria again to step up conversation on this, and that will be the highest profile, because Brazil, JBS, is the highest meat exporter in the world, to Americans, to Australia, to China, and all over the world. Their turnover in 2024 was $79 billion.
All right, Prof, let's even talk about this whole issue again in terms of security. I know the committee have put modalities to address security issues, but then stakeholders say that perhaps these reforms will further accelerate the herders' conflict in Nigeria. But then, let's hear from you. Will you be able to address some of these concerns raised by stakeholders?
Is it accelerate?
No, that's what stakeholders' position is on this matter.
No, I don't, except
okay, the herder farmers conflict has always been there. So the livestock reform right now is going to further give the herders more edge against the farmers. Is it what is it design?
I think is the other way around.
All right, please go on.
The reform is targeted both at the pastoralists, the producers, small-scale producers, and the engagement so far is to take cognizance of their concerns, which is well established and documented. Part of the challenges they face is there is a population explosion, and there is expanding desire to cultivate more food. So in the traditional setting, there used to be cattle routes. where cattle used to follow across the country. And what do cattle search for? Pasture and water. Those are the primary things that every livestock producer is concerned about. So the issue of transhumance, moving from one point to the other, is in search of feed and what? Water. So in the process of the movement, it's unfortunate that in many states they have encouraged those routes, and where the cattle has to move, they will have to find another route to pass, and that is why they establish farms. Most of those routes are either encouraged by urbanization or construction of roads or farms. So either two, they used to have a pattern from across Maiduguri down up to Ogoja, from Kano down, all routes were there before, but now being encroached. So what the committee is doing is sensitization to change the narrative, to assist from this transhumance style to a settlement pattern where they can settle and have access to pasture, water, and even amenities, especially as demonstrated by Governor Zulu in Borno State. Governor Zulu has established a typical ranch where 461 houses were constructed and inaugurated recently, just about 4 weeks ago. And in this enclave, you have schools, you have worship centers, you have animal clinics, you have pasture lands. And in the process, the pastoralists are now settled. Instead of wandering, they now have a place where they can stay, and that place can accommodate. He alone bought 1,400 heads of cattle, male and female, for each of the settled family, and goats for them too, so that they can begin to start their life, because they were victims of Boko Haram displacement. So they are now settled, and adjoining the ranch are two major grazing reserves where animals can also go and graze and come back to their abode. So this is an innovation that is commendable. So gradually, he said he is already establishing additional two. Already, they are in each of the 3 senatorial districts of Borno State. That's a good example. So if you replicate this in many places across the states, that will reduce the friction between herders and farmers, because they will be literally settled and they will have a better livelihood to pursue, and that is the essence of solving the problem. So instead of escalation, it will be a de-escalation of conflict between herders and farmers.
All right, Prof. A lot of people have come out to say that the Ministry of Livestock and the livestock reform programs is an advanced mechanism, an advanced structure for the ranching program that was formally introduced by the former president of Nigeria and President Mohammed Buhari. But how correct is this, Prof?
You know, those who have misconceptions, is their individual opinion or group opinion, but that does not take away from the fact that in this situation, we are looking at the holistic, value chain development of the livestock sector. Both producers, processors, and even those in the transportation of value chain or cold chain system and preservation and storage system are inclusive in this agenda. And then the consumers, instead of carrying a live cow from Maiduguri to Lagos that will spend 1 week, that stress will not only lead to emaciation of the cow, but valuable content of what you expect from the cow will be lost. So in this circumstance, people only think about cattle when you talk about livestock, according to Professor Yahaya, because there is a little knowledge of the opportunities that exist in other animals, like swine, poultry, cat, goats and sheep, and other micro animals like grass cutter, rabbits. People are not even talking about that. But these are healthy and prolific in production animals like goats, sheep, and grass cutter, including snails. Those are healthy animal products. But people are not talking about it. So the moment you talk about livestock, those who are negative about the sector think about only cattle. But the livestock is not all about cattle. We have only about 58 million cattle in Nigeria, where we have over 200 million goats and sheep. We have over 500 million poultry. And out of the poultry sector, 21% have been developed into intensive system of management. But in cattle, only 1%. So where are you going to wait to modernize and to improve your production system? Are you going to wait indefinitely because people are criticizing you? No. Go to Botswana. Botswana have cattle population of over 200 million. Because where you have population and nutrition supply inadequacy, you see the number of cattle to the population, they are almost equal. But in Nigeria, look at 58 million compared to how many 230 million people. It's inadequate. So therefore, with the move towards modernization, we take cognizance of the existing cultural and traditional practices. As a station professional, you need what we call to understand the issue of the definition of innovation. And in the definition of innovation, you have innovators who are probably a list like you and me, who usually look at the pros and the cons and adopt right away. You have the people who are early adopters. You have people who are early majority. You have the late majority, and then you have the laggards. The laggards, no matter whatever you tell them, they will never believe you.
Well, Prof, we'll come back to this classroom again, but I'm curious at this point. From time immemorial, we've had quite a number of, we have had Ministry of Agriculture, and now we've seen the livestock reforms, and also some states already having Ministry of Livestock as it were right now. So, is there a difference between, enlighten us on this, is there a difference between the Ministry of Livestock and the Ministry of Agriculture? And if yes, are we going to now inculcate in our educational syllabus in our schools, begin to inculcate the ministry or the subject called livestock departments? And most just like I feel that's why we really want to be in your field on this field.
It's good to educate people.
Yeah.
Agriculture is a profession that is targeted at production and nurturing food for human consumption, including protein that involve animals. So in agriculture, I will tell you today, when you go to a typical faculty of agriculture in any university system, you have more than 12 areas of field of specialization. This does not even include veterinary medicine, which is also a faculty of its own, that is dealing with life and treatment of animals as a whole. In agriculture, you have area dealing with crop as a production or agronomy that includes soil science studies. You have crop protection, entomologists, and all those people that deal with the protection of crops. You have nematologists that deal with nematodes that affect crops. Then you have agricultural economics that deal with resource management in agriculture, both land, capital, and marketing of agricultural products. Then you have animal scientists who are dealing primarily with production, processing, and nurturing of animals for value and productivity. Then you have agricultural extensionists who are dealing with the translation of knowledge in the entire agricultural space for the end users in the industry, farmers across the entire value chain. Then you have agroforestry, dealing with every component of silviculture, fauna and flora in agriculture. Then you are talking about fisheries and aquaculture, both captive and wild fish in oceans and in rivers, and therefore we are now talking about the culture of producing them in ponds and nurturing them as natural animals. So it is the whole gamut of areas that you cannot count less than 12 that you make as agriculture. But many people, because of necessity of producing what? Feeding the stomach. Once you talk about agriculture, what comes to mind easily is the food you ingest, and that is all. How the food comes to the table is not their worry. But a lot of activities have to happen before you have healthy food on your table. And not only healthy food, it has to be nutritious. So we're talking about food security and what? Nutrition security. Because if you have food, it must be the right quantity with right proportion of nutrients that will make it healthy for human consumption, for survival. And I think people need to be educated about that. So when you are talking about Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture in Nigerian time has so marginalized the livestock sector over the years, because since 1900, when agricultural activities started, and in 1876 when one plantation was established in Ibadan, the primary focus has been on crops. They never talk about livestock. And today you see Cocoa Research Institute in Ibadan has different flavors of cocoa, and they are rated as the best in the world. But Nigeria exports raw materials to other parts of the world, and a country that does not have one tree plant of cocoa produces the best chocolate for the whole world, and you know the country. So therefore it is our time to shift, not only to focus on production of agricultural products, but also look at livestock. Nigeria imports about $1.5 billion worth of livestock products, milk and others, quarterly. And we have the capacity. The countries we are importing these things from don't have our potentials in terms of land mass, in terms of agro-ecological compatibility for the production of animals. Some countries create artificial circumstances for the production of the animal system. Look at a country in Europe, for example. There are only 6 months of active production. The remaining 6 months is weather inclement. So therefore, you see them producing pasture in soilless environment, because the weather does not permit the production where there is.
Prof, let me interrupt you here at this point. There is this question that comes to mind, and it is the question around looking at the timing for the Ministry of Livestock. A lot of people say that the timing was not right, because to a large extent Nigerians are suffering from high level of inflation. Nigerians are also being confronted with a lot of tariff hikes, if you like to use that word. Now, the timing, will you say that the president's timing for the implementation of the Ministry of Livestock is in tandem?
When you talk about economic diversification, what are you talking about? You are talking about opening the space beyond traditional modes of regenerating revenue. And the biggest gold mine that we have, after what we saw in Brazil, from JBS that slaughter 1,200 heads of cattle a day in one of the factories in Leeds. We went to Obalandia to see what BRF is doing in chicken. They slaughter 290,000 chicken every day. Every day. And look at the massive employment going on in those industries. Those who are handling different aspects are there in the mechanized setting. They have outgrowers about 50-kilometer radius to the factory. People are producing chicken every 42 days and delivering to the factory. They'll give you the chicken, they'll give you the feed. Just go and produce and bring. And it generates a lot of economic activities around those areas. When we visit some of those sites, you look at them as villages, farm villages, but they have airstrip, they have every amenity you have in every city in any kind.
So these are the kind of professions they have said inflation is not above.
You look, even if you are not productive and you are perpetual importer, what is going to happen to your life? You cannot help it. So what Mr. President is doing is trying to engineer production so that we can produce more and stop perpetual dependence on importation. If you continue to import, your inflation will continue to haunt you. And therefore this is a deliberate attempt to stop and halt our perpetual dependence on foreign tests and foreign goods. Brazil and all of us who are friends were at the same level of development in the years past. But go to Brazil today, they have moved on. And you think we should continue to procrastinate? No, Mr. President, thank you for what you have done.
You don't think, Prof, at this point that the president should have hold on, probably stabilize the economy before even trying.
How do you stabilize the economy without economic activities?
But there are other ways you would have looked at this whole thing that I don't know, but looking at all of this.
No, I think you are not fair. Because if you are fair, you will know that the world will not wait for you. Today, Nigeria is going to be part of BRICS. And what do you bring to the table in BRICS? Are you going to be importing from BRICS? You have to have exports. You have to produce to stabilize your currency. If without productivity, you cannot make it. I thought you were talking about improving power supply that will encourage mass production.
We will come to that point.
No, our discussion is like
we're coming to livestock. Some of those things we will come back to this point that some of the challenges that we have, if actually Nigeria can even meet up with what you've proposed, because going by the reforms that we see is very lofty. Yeah. And I was coming to that point that are we ripe for some of the policies and the reforms initiatives that you and your team, your committee have presented?
Look, let me tell you, you can generate using biogas from the waste from animals to generate your energy. We saw it in JBS, zero waste, zero. Every product of the animal is used for one thing or the other. So you generate energy to stabilize even your industry. We are perpetually depending on one source of energy. We have the renewable energy options that we could engineer and escalate our access to energy and power that will power our industries. And this is what exactly the opportunity that this offers us. I'm very happy that many states are moving on. We just came out from Niger State and we saw what the farmer government is doing. We were all blown away. He has moved on in terms of establishing feedlots, establishing animal sector where they are producing already, and construction of modern facilities including pasture land.
So Prof, before I will let you go this morning, lastly, if we want to assess the whole reform programs and we want to implement it at state level, what will the same our GDP look like in the next 2 years? Because this is what most state governors want to hear from you, that they've not even seen the blueprint, they've not even seen the reform policy, they've not seen some of the documentation, but they want to hear from you at this point. If we say, Prof, come with your team and give us an analysis on this particular project and the reforms policy, what will be the outcome in the next 2 years for states?
As I can tell you confidently, the committee is already generating data on the potentials of all the 36 states of Nigeria, on livestock, on on transportation and on the opportunities they have based on their own independent comparative advantages. Already a state like Jigawa is already sitting on a gold mine in terms of irrigation facilities that are already established. Jigawa and Kano State, they are already leveraging on those irrigation facilities to produce throughout the year. So if you now add the menu of pasture into their production cycle, you can plant some of this pasture that you harvest 5 times in a year. If the irrigation just continue to water, all you need to continue to harvest. I have a site in Kuta, in the irrigation site in Ushishi in Niger State. They have an irrigation facilities. Farmers in that community cultivate rice 3 times in a year. 3 times in a year. The first one is for well fed. The second one, by the time they are harvesting and packing and bring, it will sprout again on its own because there's water. And they will harvest that one. The dry season, they will clear the land, cultivate again, and apply water and harvest rice 3 times. The socio-economic sector of that community is manifest. There was a day there was 40 marriages. They celebrated on TV, watch it live. There were no youth in that community that is not driving a car. So these are the kind of economic prosperity that Mr. President envisaged, that he wants to escalate the livestock sector as a major contributor to agricultural GDP. As at now, the contribution of livestock to agricultural GDP is abysmal because it has not been paid attention over the years. But now, with this deliberate manifestation and outcomes of Mr. President's intervention, we are seeing it as a game changer, and that will add more to the agricultural GDP. And as you are aware, the highest contributor to Nigerian GDP as at now is agriculture, not even oil. So the gold mine of Nigeria and the oil of Nigeria in the next future is livestock. We have seen it in Brazil. It's not a fiction, and the Brazilians are coming to Nigeria full time. So Nigerians, welcome to the new dawn in terms of livestock. That is a game changer. Do not be deceived by those who want to hoodwink you to think that it's all about an agenda of a sort. Is zero. Is economic prosperity, conflict mitigation, and indeed changing the narrative of perpetual dependence or importation of goods from outside the country. I'm pleased to inform you that I'm going to do the next university lecture at the University of Ibadan. And the title of my not inaugural lecture, I've done inaugural lecture 6 years earlier, but I'm giving the 45th university lecture. And the title is Decolonization of Food Security, Multi-Dimensional Pathways to Poverty Mitigation.
Well, Prof, we would like to be there when you give it that particular lectures.
You're welcome in March. March 6, March 13, and March 20.
Don't forget the other irrigation also we want to, because if a community that you've mentioned, they are all driving cars, I think that community is worth seeing also.
No, I will invite you to go there one day, to that cow community in Ushi local government.
No problem, Prof.
You'll be blown away.
We want to be blown away, Prof. We want to say thank you so much for being a part of the show this morning.
Thank you.
What viewers, this is how far we can go this morning, even with Professor Kuta Yahaya Mohammed. We'll go for a short break, and when we come back, we'll still talk more on Global Morning. Please go know where the show continues in a moment.